It's a really strange feeling to wake up one day and realize you've spent your entire life waiting for a piece of paper that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, that is a heavy realization.
Right. Have you ever felt like you're just, I don't know, waiting for a permission slip to finally live your life?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, like maybe it's the permission to build something totally new or to completely change your career path or honestly just to stop conforming to what everyone else expects of you. You
Uh,
just stand there looking around, waiting for some authority figure to nod and say, "Yes, you are allowed to do this now." But
mhm.
the room is empty and you're just stuck.
It is an incredibly common feeling,
Mm.
but it still remains one of the most isolating experiences
Mhm.
because nobody really talks about the underlying mechanics of it, you
Right.
know?
We don't talk about it.
We just assume that feeling unfulfilled is a personal failing. Like,
Yeah.
the default assumption is that we simply haven't worked hard enough, or maybe we just haven't waited long enough to earn that imaginary permission slip from society.
Well, unpacking that assumption is exactly the mission for our deep dive today. We are pulling from the essays and field notes of Joseph Sack. He's this really fascinating independent thinker and creator who operates under the banner unfiltered build.
Yeah, his work is really interesting.
It is. We have a stack of his writings on the table today, and his worldview completely challenges, the fundamental rules we have all been taught to follow since kindergarten.
Completely flips him upside down.
He argues that this feeling of being unfulfilled isn't an accident at all. It's the direct intended result of a system that actively trains us to wait for approval. So, okay, let's unpack this because according to the source material, we've all been handed the exact same instruction manual for life, and we mistakenly call following it being responsible.
Yeah, and the manual SAC describes is remarkably consistent across the board. It dictates a very specific sequence of events,
Not
right?
checking boxes.
Exactly. Get the degree, secure the job title, wait your turn for a promotion, raise your hand before speaking, and above all else, ask before you build anything that might alter the status quo.
Don't rock the boat.
Right. Sachs' philosophy highlights this profound structural divide in how people operate under this manual. He basically breaks the world down into two distinct groups. You have those who consume the system and those who build their own reality.
I'm struggling with this a bit right out of the gate. Someone just ignores the rules and builds whatever they want. Isn't that just a recipe for absolute chaos?
That's the natural pushback. Yeah.
Like, why shouldn't society view that as arrogant? Getting a degree and waiting your turn is just how society functions safely, isn't it?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the issue Sack is pointing out isn't really about safety or avoiding chaos. It is about dependency.
Dependency. Okay.
Yeah. Sack makes this compelling structural argument about where this instruction manual actually came from. He points out that industrialization didn't just build factories to pump out physical products. It fundamentally engineered a society of consumers.
Consumers of products, right?
Yes, but he doesn't just mean consuming commercial goods like cars or washing machines. He means we were methodically trained to consume life paths.
Oh, wow. So instead of learning how to forge a path, you're taught to just buy the prepackaged path right off the shelf.
Exactly how it functions in practice. I mean, think about the mechanics of the modern education system.
Okay.
It was largely designed during the Industrial Revolution. You sit in rows. A bell tells you when to start and stop working. You're handed a syllabus, which is basically a prepackaged curriculum, and a grading rubric.
And if you follow the rubric, you get an A.
Right. You're never asked to design the rubric or, question why the bell rings in the first place. You put your time and obedience to the machine, and the machine outputs a predictable, stable life.
That makes so much sense.
You aren't meant to understand how the machine works behind the scenes, and you certainly aren't supposed to build your own machine.
It's like only ever buying pre-assembled furniture your entire life.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like you never use a hammer, you never measure wood, you just pay for the finished product and put it in your living room. But then, the day the furniture store permanently closes, you have absolutely no idea how to build a chair.
You're just stuck.
Exactly. So instead of learning woodworking, you just sit on the cold floor and fiercely defend the concept of the store. You yell at anyone who walks by carrying raw lumber, telling them they're doing it wrong because they didn't buy it from the approved showroom.
Yeah, and Sack takes that exact psychology a step further. It is not just that the consumer doesn't know how to build the chair. It's that their inability to build creates a terrifying vulnerability.
How so?
Well, Sack writes, quote, "You cannot reshape a thing you never learned how to make."
Oh, that's really good. You cannot reshape a thing you never learned how to make.
It's a brutal but accurate conclusion. When people only ever consume the systems around them, whether that is a corporate ladder, a credentialing system, or a social hierarchy, they're stripped of their agency.
They're completely dependent.
Right. They lack the fundamental ability to rebuild the system when it inevitably fails or, just becomes obsolete.
Because they never learned the underlying mechanics of how the world is actually constructed in the first place.
Yeah,
They just learned how to be a really, really good customer.
exactly. And this leads to a massive systemic defense mechanism. Think about when this system starts to break down. When those expensive university degrees no longer guarantee stable jobs.
Which we see happening all the time now.
Right, or when the traditional milestones of adulthood become financially impossible. The consumers don't pivot and build something new. They can't.
Because they don't have the tools.
So instead, they defend the broken system with terrifying ferocity. Admitting that the system has failed means admitting something deeply painful about their own choices.
Oh man, it means admitting they wasted decades of their life asking for permission to live a life they could have just built themselves.
Exactly.
That is a brutal realization. I mean, nobody wants to face that.
No, it's a total existential crisis. To avoid that crisis, they have to fiercely maintain the illusion that the system is still valid and that the rule book still matters.
So, consumers depend, builders reinvent.
That summarizes the dichotomy perfectly. Consumers depend on the structure remaining intact. Builders simply reinvent the structure when it stops working.
Wait, I have a question about this. If this consumer mindset was stamped out by global industrialization, a worldwide thing, why does the source material pivot so hard to his specific experience in the American South?
That's a really good question.
Like, is there something unique about that geography, or is this just where he happens to live?
Well, the environment is a crucial variable in his field notes because SACT operates as what he calls an inside builder.
Okay, we definitely need to define that. What makes someone an inside builder?
So an outside builder is someone who feels the friction of a conformist society and just moves away. They move to a place where building is the cultural norm.
Like moving to Silicon Valley to launch a startup, or maybe moving to an artist's colony.
Exactly. The culture in those places explicitly rewards breaking the rules. An inside builder, on the other hand, is someone who stays within a traditional, highly structured geography, but refuses to operate by its conformist rules.
Ah, okay.
Sack lives in North Carolina, and he notes that in his region, conformity isn't just a byproduct of the culture, it is the social glue. He says it is treated practically as a love language.
Wait, practically as a love language. Here's where it gets really interesting because we usually think of manners or tradition or, Southern hospitality as inherently good things. We associate them with warmth and community.
We do.
But Sack is observing that in many ways, this is actually a rebranded mechanism of control.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how he digs right into the historical reality beneath that cultural norm. The historical context he highlights is that the South was built on foundations of enforced conformity, rigid hierarchical obedience, and the severe punishment of anyone who deviated from their assigned role or class.
Right. It was highly structured.
The machinery of that society required absolute deference. Now, the formal laws enforcing those strict hierarchies evolved over time, obviously. But the underlying social machinery, that instinct to aggressively police boundaries and enforce obedience, it didn't just vanish.
It just put on a nice suit and learned to smile.
Exactly.
Independent thought isn't explicitly outlawed anymore. It's just labeled as rude.
The exact same mechanism of control is still functioning. It's just heavily masked by etiquette. If you deviate from the script, you aren't labeled a rebel or a threat. You are dismissed as uncouth.
Uncouth.
The phrase, "you didn't check with anyone," becomes this weaponized social tool. It is a highly polite, socially acceptable way of saying, you stepped out of your assigned place in the hierarchy, and we require you to step back in.
So when Sack, acting as an inside builder, just decides to go do something without running it up the flagpole, he is violating an invisible contract that everyone else in the room has signed.
Yes.
That perfectly explains the friction. I mean, think about a time you bypassed a pointless company policy to just get a project done efficiently.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't ask the committee, you just fixed the problem. Did your manager thank you for the initiative, or were they inexplicably angry that you didn't submit the proper forms first?
Usually the latter.
Right, because according to SAC, they aren't just defending company policy. You have accidentally threatened something much deeper.
And that's where we get to this massive psychological clash that occurs in those exact moments. Because conformity masked as simple politeness creates a really messy dynamic.
Yeah.
When Sack moves through his community operating on his own internal authority, people do not just respectfully disagree with his methods. They have a visceral, negative reaction.
I think they're actually offended.
Yes, they feel personally attacked by his actions. They call him arrogant. They call him disrespectful. Sack realizes that this conformist culture is completely blending three distinct concepts into one messy emotional reaction.
What are the three concepts?
Asking permission, disrespecting someone, and living on internal authority.
Yeah. So to the conformist, those three things are completely synonymous.
Exactly.
If you do not ask my permission, you are inherently disrespecting me.
Right.
But I keep thinking about how tragic the mechanics of this misunderstanding actually are.
He really is tragic.
I mean, imagine someone who has spent their entire life studying for this incredibly grueling arbitrary exam. They've sacrificed sleep, their own hobbies, their own internal compass, all to memorize this massive rule book of social etiquette and professional hierarchy.
Right. They've given up everything for the rules.
Yeah, and they're standing outside the exam room, exhausted, clutching their notes, waiting patiently for their name to be called. And then they watch someone else just casually walk right past the exam room, push open the exit doors, and succeed out in the real world without ever sitting down for the test.
That completely invalidates the student's lifetime of sacrifice. The student cannot simply observe the person walking by and think, oh, they're taking an alternative route.
Because that would mean their own studying was pointless.
Exactly. They have to perceive the builder's existence as a mockery of their studying. If we synthesize the psychology behind this reaction, we see what Sack calls the identity trap.
The identity trap.
Yeah. The conformists have not just learned the rule book, they have completely fused their identity to it. The rules, the waiting in line, the deference to the committee, that is who they are.
Wow.
If you take the rule book away, if you prove through your actions that the rule book is entirely unnecessary, there is no core self left underneath.
So it is not just annoyance. It is a literal defense of their own existence.
It is deeply destabilizing. Sack's mere existence as an independent inside builder is a walking existential threat to them.
Because of what he represents.
Right. Because if Sack does not need the permission slip to build his life, then maybe the conformist permission slip, the one they sacrifice their authentic self to obtain, is completely worthless.
And human beings will do almost anything to avoid feeling like they wasted their lives playing a rigged game.
Anything.
Yeah.
So rather than looking inward and dismantling their own conditioning, they project all that panic outward onto the builder. They say, you are arrogant. You think you are better than us because you didn't ask us first.
But the builder isn't sending a message of disrespect at all. This is where the tragedy really locks in for me.
Yeah.
The builder is completely unaware that they're supposedly transmitting a message of defiance.
Totally unaware. For a builder, not asking for permission is, as Sack puts it, just Tuesday.
Just Tuesday. I love that.
It is not a calculated rebellion. It is just their default mode of operation. They encounter a problem, they analyze the resources, and they start building a solution.
Yeah, they don't naturally think to form an exploratory committee.
Or seek a blessing from someone who has nothing to do with the project.
Right. The builder is just living. But the conformist is receiving a hostile message regardless. So what does this all mean for someone living this reality right now?
It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. If this invisible clash is constantly happening, how does an inside builder exist in a world of consumers without just becoming exhausted and furious? I mean, if everyone around you is calling you arrogant just for existing on your own terms and solving problems efficiently, it would be so incredibly easy to become cynical.
It would be very easy to make it your life's mission to tear down the conformist structures out of pure spite, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
But Sacker presents a surprisingly peaceful resolution to this conflict in his field notes. He isn't bitter about the pushback he receives. Yeah, he isn't trying to aggressively lecture his neighbors or, in his words, burn the South down. His solution is remarkably simple and profound. He just stopped renting space in it.
Stopped renting space in it. Oh man, that implies you actually have a choice in whether or not you occupy that mental and emotional real estate.
Exactly. You don't have to fight the system. You can just evict it from your mind.
It is the ultimate reclamation of personal agency.
He recognized that the authority the system claims to have over him is a collective illusion, so he simply stopped participating in the illusion.
That's powerful.
There is this great closing image from his essays that perfectly encapsulates this realization. Imagine a massive crowd of people standing in a wide open space.
Okay.
They are all queued up in a long, orderly line, patiently and politely waiting for a gate to open.
And everyone in the line is checking their watches, making sure they have their paperwork perfectly filled out, whispering complaints to each other about how long the line is taking.
But absolutely nobody steps out of bounds.
Right. The line is the law.
Then the builder walks up. The builder looks at the gate, looks at the anxious crowd, and then looks a few feet to the left and notices something everyone else missed.
What's that?
There was never actually a wall to begin with.
Oh, wow.
There was just a freestanding gate sitting in the middle of a vast open field. The authority of the gate is pure theater.
Sure theater.
And while everyone else is furiously waiting for the imaginary permission slip to be stamped, the builder just walks around the gate. They are simply a confident person standing exactly where a wall used to be.
The joke is that the permission slip never existed.
Never existed.
The wall was in our heads the whole time, carefully placed there by a system that desperately needed us to stay in line to keep the machine running.
Exactly.
So if you are listening to this right now and you move differently through the world, if you've spent years in your career or your personal life being called difficult or stubborn or disrespectful or, told you just don't know your place, it is highly likely you aren't any of those things.
Not at all.
You probably just stopped asking for permission before everyone around you was ready for it. You saw the open field while they were still staring at the locked gate. So you have a choice to make today. You can keep standing in the line for a slip that is never coming. Or you can pick your lane, or better yet, build an entirely new one.
It requires a profound shift in perspective to step out of that line, but it's worth it. And this raises an important question to mull over as you go about your day. Think about the structures dictating your own life, your career trajectory, and your relationships. If the walls we've been politely waiting behind are entirely imaginary, what structure in your own life are you currently waiting for a permission slip to bypass? And who exactly do you think is going to sign it?